Welcome. It's Campfire Storytime, and I'm Jim Harold. The following story aired on my podcast, Jim Harold's Campfire, and was told by Farbod from the United Kingdom. It's a chilling one. I hope you like it. I qualified as a physician several years ago, and since then I've had 2 or 3 quite unusual experiences. The most memorable one, which I really could not put down to just a reasonable, rational explanation, is the one I'm telling today. It happened several years ago now when I first qualified, and it must have been within the first 4 months or so of actually starting work. I was on during quite a late night shift in one of the hospitals in Wales. I was downstairs in what is known as the medical admissions unit, just seeing a couple of patients who had been referred in by their family doctor, when suddenly I got a cardiac arrest call. Now, when you're on nights, there's a whole team of people, and the medical team generally all carry bleepers. Now, you call them beepers in the States. We call them bleepers. Over the bleepers, I received a cardiac arrest call. I was the most junior member of the team, and because of that, I was doing pretty much the dog's body kind of work in the medical admissions unit. I was quite far away from where this cardiac arrest call was. Now, in this particular hospital, we had several wards on either side. It was probably 4 or 5 stories tall. The medical admissions unit is on the lower ground floor. The cardiac arrest call that I had upstairs was on the 4th floor, the top floor of the hospital. So I knew I was quite far away and that there were members of the team that would be there before me. I'd had 4 or 5 flights of stairs to climb, so I didn't rush because I didn't want to be completely out of breath by the time I actually arrived to the patient. I was running up these stairs and I got to the 3rd floor, which I think in American parlance would be the 4th floor. When I got to the landing area there, I came across a man who was just standing looking out the window. The man was probably in his late 60s, possibly early 70s, and I didn't take that much notice of him because I was in the middle of trying to get to the cardiac arrest call without completely making myself conk out through exertion. Yet I couldn't help notice that this man was naked from the waist down. It was rather unusual. It's something you notice. Now, again, this is a medical ward where we do have elderly patients. Some have dementia, and they do go wandering. This was in the middle of the night. Still, it was unusual, and it did make me stop for a second. I looked at him, and he was wearing a mint green t-shirt and nothing else. He wasn't talking or doing anything, but just standing there looking out the window. I didn't stop, but I opened the door of one of the wards and shouted, "There's a man in the corridor. Can you come and get him?" And then I carried on. I had 1 more flight of stairs to climb to get to the call. When I arrived on the ward, I went into one of the side rooms where the arrest team was. There was lots of noise, lots of people talking, bustling, and I knew that I was pretty much the last person to arrive, given how far I'd come. I must have frozen when I saw the person who was being worked on in the room because someone turned around and said to me, "What's the matter, Farbod?" I didn't say anything. I kind of clicked back into reality. But here is the incredible part of the story. The person whose heart had stopped and who was being worked on, well, it was the same man who I'd seen on the floor below looking out the window. I forgot about it in a way and just got on with it to provide assistance. But obviously, this affected me. The man in arrest was naked from the waist down in the bed, and he was wearing a mint green t-shirt. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about it now. We were there for about 20 minutes or so, but the guy very clearly had a very significant episode, and he passed away. As everything was being cleared up and I'd considered what I'd seen, I thought that if I went back downstairs where I shouted at the nurses to come and collect this half-naked man, perhaps they'd tell me, "Oh yes, we found the man." Maybe it was all a big coincidence, and for some reason my mind had played a trick on me. Perhaps I was a little bit hypoxic, having run up the stairs and my perception had been a bit altered. So I thought I'd go downstairs and speak to the nurses who could confirm that yes, there was indeed an elderly man standing there and they put him back to bed, and everything was fine. Of course, when I went downstairs and spoke to the nurses there, they were all chattering because I'd frightened them. They hadn't seen anything whatsoever. They just heard the door to the stairwell open and someone shout, "There's a man here." By the time they managed to check, there was no one there at all. That just made me feel even more creeped out. It's relatively difficult to reconcile something like this. Still, I consider medicine as more of an art than a science. The science of it is based on a lot of statistics and being able to interpret risks, understanding various aspects of the very hard science of medicine, which would be chemical, physiology, anatomy, things like this. Yet one thing I have never discounted when treating people in my practice over the years is the consciousness aspect of medicine, how important it is to cater to people's psychological needs and their spiritual needs, whether you believe it or not. It has great power over the well-being of people. You always have to respect it, whether you agree with it or not. I definitely have moments in my career when someone's spiritual beliefs, or shall we say their faith in the art or the science of medicine, has made the medicine work in a way that probably wouldn't be explicable in a statistical or physiological format. But it works. Everyone knows about the placebo effect, and that it makes people feel better. So I can't discount the power of human consciousness. Whether there is an externalized force or not, I'm not sure. I've seen things like I've explained to you, which makes me think that perhaps there is something beyond the biomechanical workings of the human body. That was a story as told by Farbod from the United Kingdom on my podcast, Jim Harold's Campfire. You can also find it in our True Ghost Stories book, Campfire 4, which you can find on Amazon. I invite you to click on one of these videos if you're interested in more great campfire stories. Thanks for tuning in, and stay spooky.